Whether you're onboarding with IndustrySelect or just learning about us, you probably wonder most about Build a List. When you log into IndustrySelect, Build a List can be found here or here on the dashboard. Build a List is the function that will allow you to add criteria to build a list of companies that have met all of your criteria. You're going to work through the filters along the left to build your list, and then you always have a running tally up here on the top right-hand corner. So starting in geography, this is where you would target businesses based off of their geography or where they're located. So for example, if I wanted to look for all the manufacturers that are in the Chicago metro area, I can just type in Chicago here and then click on that drop down, which pulls it over into here, which is what's changing my company count up here. You can also further tighten up this criteria. Let's say I want to only work in the state of Illinois, so I can add Illinois on top of here as another piece of criteria, which then will change the company count again, because in this example, it has removed everything that was in the Gary or Kenosha areas. Industry would be where you would target companies based off of their industries, what they're actually doing. Your options here are SIC code, NAICS code, business classification, and business description. All four of them work well. For my example, I'll use SIC code. I do want to point out here, though, that SIC code and NAICS codes will work the same way. So my example is just going to be SIC codes. If you know your SIC codes, that's simple. You can just enter them in. I happen to have farm machinery memorized, so I can just enter that in like that. But if I didn't know any of my codes, I can use keywords. So if I wanted to look for companies that were manufacturing furniture, I can just type in furniture here, which then brings up this drop down of all the different subcategories of furniture industry and those associated SIC codes. So I can just pick from this list what I want to add onto my criteria. And then clicking the red X will clear that out to start again. If you have a long list of SIC codes already, you could use bulk add, which you can either type them all in at once, or you could just copy and paste a list over here. Maybe you have a list already saved in a document somewhere. And then range add allows you to add a range of SIC codes. Let's say I want everything between 3530 and 3590. I can then pull all those over all at once. If anything ever shows up over here that you decide you don't need or want, you can just click on it to remove it. And then we also have a filter here for ISO certifications. Size would allow you to target companies based off of their size, whether this is by number of employees or annual sales or square footage. They all work the same way. You only need a minimum or a maximum, but you could also specify a range in any of these areas. So let's just say I want companies that have 10 or more employees. I could put 10 here and leave this blank and then pull that over, and that means 10 or more. And then the last filter here is going to be for sales or employee growth or decline. The executive level is going to allow you to target companies based off of the functions and titles of the executives that are at these locations. The Advanced tab has a long list of other filters that you can work through. We're going to go into greater detail on the Advanced tab in future videos. So for now, if you have questions, you can just hover over the question marks here, which will explain them to you in greater detail. You can then review all of your criteria, which shows you here how many companies and how much criteria, and all your criteria is laid out here. From here, you're probably going to save this list or load a previously saved list, or you might just want to clear out all of this criteria and start all over. I'm going to save this list today. And now that I have this list saved, I will always be able to come back and work out of it. I haven't lost it. I can clear out this criteria and start a whole new list of criteria, and I haven't lost this. I'll show you where it's saved at when we get to the end. But the list itself is just found here under View List. Now, when this initial list shows up here, you can sort by any of these headers to help you work through your list easier. And then you just click on the company name to open up that profile and do further research on them. We're looking at profiles in another video, so we're just going to hold off on that. If you have access to an exportable version, you can just go a little bit further here. These features along the top here are only available in those exportable versions, but what these will allow you to do is take this information from IndustrySelect and put it onto your own system. So this one on the far right would take all the information from each of these company profiles and directly import them into either your Salesforce or your HubSpot account. Maybe you don't have Salesforce or HubSpot, or maybe you don't need to do that. You can still take all the information from each of these company profiles and put them onto a spreadsheet. So on this spreadsheet, FlowServe US is probably going to be the first row on this spreadsheet, but it might have like 50 columns attached to it because there's going to be a separate column for every single piece of information that we have on these companies. Typically, the point of this is for you to probably map your columns and do a data dump into a CRM. But maybe you don't have a CRM. You can also just work out of this as a spreadsheet. And again, once it's in a spreadsheet, there's so many different things you can do with that in a mail merge. But you could also plot these companies directly onto Bing Maps. You can print address labels, or you can print out the company profiles onto paper. And you can also work forwards and backwards through this list while you're inside of these company profiles. Again, for those of you who are using an exportable version, you can choose to omit companies from any of these exports up here, but that is pretty much the only function of this omit button, is to leave these companies off of these exports. Now that really is as far as it goes for us on the build a list portion. I do want to show you that the list that we just made is saved here under saved lists. So we're back on the dashboard, come to save lists, and this here is that list that we just made together. So that's all that I can cover for you on the build a list portion. Again, if you do have questions remaining, please feel free to reach out to us at tech@mni.net. Thank you so much for your time.